Hello. Today is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Welcome to Career Force Minnesota Explore Careers series. Today, our topic in our industry that we delve into is one of the subsets of the natural resources industry. You know, what is natural resources? We think, oh, the air that we breathe, the land that we walk on, the water that we drink. I put this slide together just for your interest. Sometimes you'll hear on the news from when they're reporting the latest Bureau of Labor statistics that the natural resources and mining super sector had the increase in jobs or a decrease in jobs. So just for a point of clarification, natural resources and mining are put together, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls them a super sector. So then that's divided into two groups, which in one sector we have the agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. And then in the other sector underneath that is the mining, quarrying, oil, and gas extraction. So then they divide that sector into even more sub-industries. So under agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting, there's crop production, forestry and logging, animal production, fishing, hunting, and trapping, and then all of the other support activities for forestry and agriculture. Mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction is also divided into subsectors, but I didn't list those here. So that's just a little bit of, all of the different activities really that encompass this industry when you hear it on the news or, anything in terms of how we talk about it. So today, I'm really happy to have a couple of the people from some of our government resources when it comes to natural resources. So today we've got a team from the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. We have someone from the Department of Natural Resources. And then hopefully the presenter for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will be also able to join me. He let me know just a few minutes before it started that he was having computer trouble. So I'm hoping that he'll be able to join via telephone and still be able to present the information. Otherwise, I'll go through some of it for you. So I'd like to kick it off and welcome Mary Jewell and David Copeland from the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. They're going to tell you all about what their board does and a sneaky way of how to refer to it. I just love this. So Mary and David, take it away.
Thanks so much, Liz. Well, it's great to be here with all of you today. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about Bowser, what our organization does, the type of workplace that it is, and the sorts of opportunities that are available. I'll start by just introducing myself. My name is Mary Jewell. I'm the communications coordinator for Bowser. I've been working there about 3 years. And the work that I do really focuses on outreach and messaging, things like putting out newsletters, maintaining our website, press releases, presentations, a lot of those public-facing tasks and products that we put together as an agency are what I focus on. But enough about me. Let's talk a little about Bowser's mission. And before we dive into that, I'm going to give an overview and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Dave in a couple of minutes here. So Bowser's mission is to improve and protect Minnesota's soil and water resources by working in partnership with local organizations and private landowners. So what does that mean and what does it look like on the ground? We work with conservation programs. Most of our programs involve voluntary conservation, where we ask landowners to opt in to certain programs that are going to benefit our environment in a variety of ways. A lot of that looks like, we call them conservation easements. So you'll have a landowner set aside a certain amount of land to act as habitat and to not be in the farming production process. that land is set aside for those environmental and habitat benefits. We are a smaller state agency. We work with mostly local partners. Some of the partners we work with are counties, metro area cities, soil and water conservation districts are a really big partner for us, watershed districts, watershed management organizations, and we do some work with joint powers boards as well. Liz, you can go to the next slide. So just a little bit more about who we are. So as I said, we're a small state agency of natural resources and conservation professionals. We have about 120 staff members, but we do have 9 offices across Minnesota. We'll talk a little more about where those locations are in a minute. We are overseen by a board, and that board, it's a 20-member board, and it's made up of local officials, folks who are active in local government. We have citizen members, and we also have members from various state agencies. We work a lot with state agencies like the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Agriculture, and Pollution Control. So there's a lot of collaborating, and on our board that's reflected, we'll have members from those other agencies represented. I wanted to also talk a little bit about the work and the results that we've produced as an agency. So during Bowser's tenure, we've installed about 28,300 conservation practices. We've funded roughly 7,195 conservation easements, which is what I was referring to earlier, where you set aside land for environment and habitat benefits, water quality benefits. We also work a lot with local governments on water planning, and we help them put together 275 management plans to really guide and oversee the work that they want to do to improve their water quality. You can go to the next slide. A little more about our offices. So we have, despite being a small agency, we do have 9 offices around the state. Our central office, where the most staff work, is in St. Paul, but we do have regional offices in Duluth, Bemidji, Detroit Lakes, Brainerd, St. Cloud, Marshall, Mankato, and Rochester. And one of the nice benefits of having these regional offices is we're able to meet people where they are. We're able to work with landowners in their own communities, in addition to having a central office in St. Paul. And I think that gives us some advantages in terms of being available and meeting people where they are. And you can go to the next slide, Liz. One of my favorite things about Bowser and working for Bowser is our core values. A lot of organizations have core values, and as a communications professional, I've seen a lot of different types of core values. What I love about Bowser's is that they really apply to our work, and I see them being lived out in the work itself. When we have new staff, we often will ask them, to pick a core value that resonates with them. We do that, further on down the road as well. So our core values are empowerment. We trust each other to make good decisions. Innovation, creative solutions are our specialty. Cooperation, we're all in this together. Accountability, say what you mean what you say, and follow through. And I'm probably not supposed to pick favorites, but I really like this last one, perspective. We take our job seriously, ourselves not so much. The culture at Bowser is a really nice, close-knit community. There are some definite advantages to being a smaller agency because we all know each other. And it's very easy to build relationships and that kind of rapport with your colleagues at an agency like Bowser. Everybody has their own roles, but we really work well together. And, as a fairly new employee myself, I felt very welcome when I started at Bowser. It's just a very approachable crowd. They're happy to answer questions and explain, the nuances of the work to people who might be new to it. Next slide. This is the point where I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Mary.
Yep.
So before we do that, we had a question come in the chat from Lisa. Do you manage possible overpopulation of areas that may threaten resources? Can you give me a little more information? Can you give me an example of that, Lisa?
Well, why don't we have Lisa type in a little bit more clarification, and then
Perfect.
Dave, go ahead, and we'll come back to the question.
Okay, all right, thanks, Liz. So as Mary mentioned, a part of our mission is working in partnership with local units of government and private landowners. And that's very true. Bowser doesn't do really much on the ground work ourselves. It's always in partnership with local units of government or local groups of landowners or nonprofits. They're the folks that know the resources, they know the community, and so they oftentimes come to us with projects as applications, and then we fund those with state dollars, and then we follow up to see that the work was done to meet the objectives. So a little bit about me. I'm a board conservationist, and so there's about 15 or 16 of us around the state, and I like to consider myself kind of a liaison between the agency and my customers, which are the local units of government that are in my work area. So as a liaison, I'm kind of an advocate on behalf of my customers to the agency, but then I'm also a conduit from the agency down to my customers to make sure they understand the programs and opportunities that we have available to them. Next slide, please. So this is not an all-inclusive list of the types of expertise and people that we hire. This is kind of a snippet, but we have accountants and financial specialists that work in our central office in St. Paul. We have several administrative assistants, both in St. Paul and in some of our other regional offices around the state. We have biologists who work with some of our easement programs. Mary, our communication specialist, soil scientists and wetland scientists. We work a lot in the wetland, both preservation and wetland restoration fields. So when you see GIS, that might be an unfamiliar acronym for some people. Those are Geographic Information System. And that's basically a computer software that can show a lot of things about geography. We also have engineers and training specialists. And so let's see, we have a question in the chat. What kind of degree, training, background do you need for any of these jobs? Most of them probably require a bachelor's degree, but most of them probably don't require anything beyond a bachelor's degree. Myself personally, I have a bachelor's degree with a BS in agriculture with a major in soil science from the University of Wisconsin. The jobs that we have available will get posted on the state website that some of you may be familiar with, and I'll show you in just a minute a couple of positions that we currently have. Let's see, any entry-level programs or training programs? Well, we do have occasionally some internship opportunities. The pandemic has, affected a lot of things, and one of the things that's affected is state agencies' ability to both hire new staff and fill behind vacancies. But we do have interns occasionally. Some of those are people that are in school. Some may have graduated. Somebody asked about a LIDAR initiative. We are in partnership with other agencies on the, so what LIDAR is a GIS layer that shows the topography of the landscape. And it's done with certain aerial photography, specialized aerial equipment, and we are part of a partnership that's working on getting a new layer of that.
Dave, I was wondering, related to the questions about getting into the field. Sometimes people, say like a financial specialist or administrative assistant, they do want to focus and get into the natural resources industry. Are there for-profit companies or nonprofits where they could get some, kind of work their way into the industry before perhaps coming to the state of Minnesota?
Yes, as a matter of fact, a number of our current staff worked originally maybe for county government, maybe for soil and water conservation districts, maybe for some federal agencies, U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and private industry as well. We have some employees now on Bowser that used to work in the private industry. So I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that that we are under a hiring freeze, and so in order to actually post jobs right now, we need to get special approval, and so we do have 2 job opportunities. These are both supervisory positions, but you can see what those are and what the closing dates of those are. And I did put in the chat early on the link to our careers page on the Bowser website. And so you can always refer to that as well. Oh, thank you, Liz. Next slide. I think that's it. So thank you very much. Look forward to listening to the rest of this discussion. I do need to leave a little bit early, but I think Mary will be able to be on till 3:30. But if you do have any other questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them as we can. Thank you.
But my one other question, and it was related to Lisa's question that she had put in the chat. She clarified that she lives in the White Bear Lake area.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And, they share a water table with surrounding communities that are being built up very quickly. So I guess that's related to the type of work, like the Board of Soil and Water. Are you doing more policy, or when you work there, are you doing more actually environmental testing? So what's the nature of your work?
Our work really is to support the local units of government that are doing work, and so we are a pretty big financial provider of funding to do water quality type projects. Some of you may be familiar with the Clean Water Legacy Amendment that was passed, I think, back in 2008, where 0.3% sales tax was added for, I think, 25 years. And that generates literally hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And so Bowser gets some of that money, and then we use those clean water funds, as we call them, to fund projects that our local partners have identified and have been able to demonstrate that they're going to have measurable results as a result of those projects.
Say, Liz, how are we doing on time? I have a couple thoughts on some of these questions that came in on the chat.
I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay, I just wanted to say that while many of these positions do require some education in environmental sciences, there are opportunities that don't require that. I have a degree in journalism and had very little experience in environmental science before working at Bowser. Other examples might be the administrative assistant roles, our finance roles. So while the bulk of our positions are focused on natural resources and the science, there are other opportunities as well. And I apologize, but I also have a 3 o'clock meeting. So, so both me and Dave are probably going to be jumping off here pretty soon. But please reach out by email if you have any questions or want to connect offline.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks for adding that, Mary. I didn't want to infer that you had to have a natural resource degree to work for Bowser.
No.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that, because there are a lot of people in the world nowadays that are career changing. This past year has really, opened our eyes to all of the possibilities that maybe we want to take our life in a different direction. So, thank you. So yeah, let's turn over a new leaf and go over to the Department of Natural Resources. Today we have joining us Carrie Ross, who's going to tell us a little bit more about DNR's role in the natural resources field.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, and thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Much of what I have to share about the Department of Natural Resources is very similar to what you heard from Dave and Mary about Bowser. Just maybe amplified a little bit because DNR is a much larger state agency than the Board of Water Soil Resources. So a little bit about me. I am a regional planner. I am in the Northwest region of the state. I work out of Bemidji, Minnesota. I have a degree in speech communication and a master's degree in career and technical education. And so I'm another fine example of somebody who has zero natural resource or science background, and yet here I am working for a natural resource agency. So it can be done. And Liz has the slide of the DNR mission posted. And we like to refer to our mission statement as the three-legged stool. So as you can see, one of our priorities is to conserve our natural resources. So we have places like scientific and natural areas that preserve endangered and threatened species, including our own state flower, the lady slipper, which if you've never seen them, they are in bloom now. Travel north. Providing outdoor recreation is another one of our important legs of our mission statement. And so if you could just go back, we're still on the mission statement a little bit, Liz, thank you. Providing outdoor recreation, so for those who like to hike, bike, camp, canoe, hunt, fish, we're working on those opportunities. And then thirdly, commercial uses. So it is our responsibility to look at state managed lands for timber harvest or minerals, the mining of iron ore and gravel resources as well. So next slide. The DNR is a huge agency. We have 7 different divisions, and those divisions are labeled here. And we have approximately 4,300 employees across the state and about 300 different report to work buildings, including places like state parks or little known locations like Winaska, Minnesota, which is a very important forestry center for us, and likes to boast about their forests that they planted strategically in the shape of Minnesota. So if you haven't seen pictures of that, it's a fun thing to Google a little bit and learn more. We are overall looking for people who are passionate about the outdoors and protecting our natural resources, and people who work at the DNR share our passions about animals, plants, and outdoor recreation. And if these are your passion, there's a job for you at the DNR. Many types of jobs, some requiring degrees and some that do not. So if we go to the next slide, you can see some samples of different jobs. Whatever your path, you can find it in nature. So we have the 3 key categories there: protecting our natural resources and promoting recreational safety. So we have everything from our conservation officers, formerly known as game wardens. We have our foresters and our wildland firefighters, who sadly are very, very busy during our dry conditions right now. But we also have state parks that have beaches. So we hire lifeguards and we have our watercraft inspectors. Then we have folks who work on taking care and teaching about our facilities, flora and fauna. So if you're just passionate about the natural resources, but maybe you don't have that science background, we also have heavy equipment mechanics. We have our facility advisors. We have groundskeepers and building maintenance specialists who help maintain all of our park buildings and our report to work locations. We also have folks supporting DNR operations from the inside. So we too have communication specialists like Mary, the work that Mary does for Bowser. We have people like me, planners, who facilitate meetings and organize events. We have architects, engineers, map makers, accountants, all sorts of different opportunities, no matter what your background and level of education is. I'd also like to address one of the questions that Mary asked us about was, does your organization hire people over the age of 50? And yes, as a matter of fact, we do. I saw a comment about people who are maybe pursuing an encore career, that they've worked in a certain field up to a certain point in their life, and they've just kind of gotten burnt out and they're looking for something different. The DNR is a Beyond the Yellow Ribbon agency, so we very proudly support military, active duty, and veterans and their families. And we do that both from a hiring perspective as well as a user perspective, offering special rates on licenses, fees, and permits for a variety of different activities that the DNR oversees, such as state park entrance or hunting and angling licenses or special seasons. We have flexible scheduling for seasonal and on-call positions, full-time and part-time. This might include working with our Perks and Trails division, helping to build or maintain trails for various uses, including OHV, horse riding, bike riding, walking, hunter access, all sorts of different trails across the state. We might have folks who are interested in firefighting, and so they're smoke chasers, and that's a seasonal role. Or we might have people who work at our state parks and they offer interpretive programs or work at some of our gift shops, or even some of our larger parks like Itasca State Park at the headwaters of the Mississippi. There are restaurants and gift shops at that park, so we're looking for cooks and servers and more of a retail sort of environment. So next slide, please. And I see your questions, and I'm hoping to get to those at the end. So we'll go through the slides, and then I'll do my best to address as many of the questions as possible. We invite you to be part of our diverse community at the DNR. With so many employees, we have a diverse group of folks. This is an image from some of our research laboratories that are mostly located in the metro, in the St. Paul area, where our commissioner and our central office is located. We're trying very hard to make sure that our very large employee numbers align well with the population of Minnesota. So we are looking for you, all of you. One of the questions that Liz posed to us was to describe a day in the life. What does an average day at the DNR look like? So if you go to the next slide, this is one that I borrowed from one of my wildlife biologist friends that gave me a little bit of a chuckle. And you can see that sometimes what we actually do is different from what we thought we do, what our mom thinks we do, what our friends think we do. And it's a very difficult question to answer, being that we're such a large organization with so many diverse positions and different divisions and roles. And so I think the key takeaway is that we have something for everybody. And even those positions that seem like they might be more field-based still have a certain amount of office work that is included, and having to go to meetings and file paperwork and file reports. So every job, even if you think, oh man, forestry, that's for me, I love being in the woods. Just know that there's still going to be some office work and some paperwork involved with that, even though you also get to go out into the woods. Also, COVID has impacted all of us, and so many of the DNR employees, like my agency counterparts, state agency counterparts, we have been operating under a temporary telework order, and so many of us have been working from home, and we are still in the process of looking at what longer term impacts that may have on our work environment. And so we don't yet know, but I would encourage you to really look at what is posted in the position postings, because some jobs may have a telework component where you're expected to report to the office a certain amount of time, but the rest of the time could be done from your home office as well. So that's an evolution that's happening now. Next slide, please. So here you see the website and mn.gov careers. You'll notice that if you go to that page, that web link, we refer to ourselves as the Department of Natural Resources, but the state refers to us as Natural Resources Department. So if you go to that site, there's a bar on the left side of the screen where you can choose an agency that you may have a preference to work for. And so the DNR is listed as the Natural Resources Department in that website. We also want to let you know, we talked a little bit about our yellow ribbon agency status that we've had and very proud of having since 2013 for hiring our active duty and military veterans. We also do perform a background check. So background checks are done on every employee at the DNR, but that is not a make or break sort of thing. The background check is done, and then those background checks are reviewed to see if there is evidence of rehabilitation, or if there's any violations that may interfere with the work that you've been hired to do. So our conservation officers probably are pretty boring in their background, so to speak. So they probably don't have any violations, but there might be some other positions where, a violation from many years ago may not be as impactful. So it's done on a case-by-case basis based on what it is that may come up on that background check. Next slide, please. So a couple of tips for the application process. State positions or positions at the DNR are all posted on that mn.gov website. That includes our internship positions. We heard Dave talk a little bit about internships at Bowser. DNR also hosts interns, and we do post those internships on that same portal, on that same website. I would pay special attention if you set up an account on the mn.gov website for careers. Pay special attention to your resume. make sure that your resume uses keywords and terms and highlights your career and education as relates to the job posting of what it is that you're applying for. Sometimes your experience and what you know doesn't always translate to people who may not know as much about your field. So for example, the question was asked earlier about private industry transitioning into agency work, state agency work. I'm thinking about one of my colleagues in our lands and minerals division. She used to be work in the banking industry doing mortgage loans, and now she works in our lands and minerals department facilitating property transactions on behalf of the citizens of Minnesota who own so much public property that's managed by the DNR. And so just make sure that terminology and acronyms and your experience is spelled out crystal clear on your resume, and pull those keywords off the job posting to make sure that it aligns, and a non-expert would be able to see that you're qualified for the position for which you're applying. Check back often or create an account to receive notifications. I would also encourage you to read the actual job posting, because there are sometimes jobs that are posted at the DNR that have a title that isn't really very accurate describing what it is that the position does. For example, I think of our law compliance representatives. If I were to read that as a non-DNR employee, I would think that that position somehow resides in a courtroom as a law compliance representative. But what that actually is an aquatic invasive species inspector at one of our public water access points, or multiple public water access points actually. And so a law compliance inspector is actually not anywhere near a courtroom. They are at boat landings, helping people check their watercraft and other equipment to avoid the spread of invasive species. So with that, I think my next slide is just going to discussion. So I'll visit some of the questions that have been posted in the chat. Looks like you guys have been very busy with your questions, so thank you for all of these ideas. The DNR2 is participating in LIDAR, so we talked a little bit about that. A degree is not needed at the U.S. Forest Service, so I mentioned that also not all positions at the DNR require a degree either. Hearing and reading that Enbridge people are taking millions of gallons out of the Mississippi, is that legal? It depends on how it has been permitted. With the drought conditions, our Ecological and Water Resource Division is reviewing those permits very carefully for Enbridge, as well as other producers who have permits to tap into water resources. If the water gets too low in the river or stream where they have been permitted to use, those permits have been suspended. And then the staff within the groundwater unit helps to identify some other resources that may be acceptable during these conditions. Are all state park employment just seasonal positions, or they're full-time year-round? A good question. There are some park positions that are full-time year-round, mostly park management positions. There are always people there that help to keep the main parking lots plowed and cleared. There are interpretive programs at many of our parks year-round. I think of Lake Bemidji State Park where I live. We do snowshoe tying events or candlelight skis, so there are staff at some of our parks year-round. Part-time seasonal jobs available to supplement as a second income. Yes, absolutely. I mentioned interpretive programs. There are folks that work with our state parks to offer lots of variety of different interpretive programs. Some of those are not necessarily natural resource based. I have a friend who offers yoga classes, beachside yoga classes through our parks. or local culture and history, taking walks through the local bog and talking about medicinal plants. And I see Liz posted that there are 18 openings at the DNR right now. I do have that also up and looking at that, so I'd encourage you to check out the website. And then lastly, I do want to touch on volunteer activities. All of the paying jobs, including the internship positions, are posted on the career portal, mn.gov, but the volunteer positions are posted on the state website, the DNR website. So I would encourage you to check out opportunities to volunteer with the DNR as well. And with that, I see it's 3:11. I believe that's the end of my time, so I appreciate your time and attention.
Great, thank you. Yes, I want to make sure that we leave enough time for Brian Lee, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So this is a federal agency. So Brian, tell us more. How does it work with the state agency?
Great. Thanks for having me, Liz. A lot of what Carrie said is very similar to what we're talking about. Looking for the same kind of folks. In fact, a lot of our folks jump over to the DNR and vice versa. DNR biologists will come over with us too. So it depends a lot about what the mission is. I myself, I've been with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for about 6 years, and I'm a recruiter, and I pretty much cover all of the Midwest. And we advertise all of our positions on USA Jobs, which is a big job board for the federal government. Pretty much every federal job is going to be posted on there. And I think this audience, Liz, is this mostly veterans that I'm talking to now?
No,
Or not?
no, it's everyone.
It's everyone? Okay.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so like I said, we're going to post pretty much everything on USA Jobs for our postings. I did put my information in the chat box if anybody wants to, write my phone number down or my email and contact me later after this presentation. But just give you a quick overview of our agency. Liz, if you could click the next slide. Okay, so the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're part of the Department of Interior, and they have about 11 different sections underneath them. So the federal government, big animal, we're kind of a small fish, believe it or not, in the Department of Interior. I think we've got about 8,000 employees in Fish and Wildlife Service. And the reason I brought up about the military is, the military, if you're in it, the Army has an MOS or the Air Force has an AFSC, the Navy might have a rate. Well, we're pretty much similar to that with the federal government. Every job we have has a number associated with it. And for most people trying to get into the federal government, they don't understand that. And that, I think, is the key to getting a job in the federal government, is to understanding what job series number you qualify for or you should get into. I saw in the chat box, a lot of people were asking, do you need a degree for everything? A lot of our stuff, yes, you do need a degree, especially if you want to be in like fisheries. We expect our fisheries folks to have a fisheries degree. General biologists, they should have a degree as well. But if you want to get into something else like a park ranger, we don't require a degree for that. A lot of our fire science, a lot of people don't understand that, but believe it or not, getting into the Fish and Wildlife Service, a lot of people come in as a fireman because we do a lot of prescribed burns on our lands. So hopefully that's going to educate some people in a way to kind of get your foot in the door for something like that. Next slide, please. So again, I said we've got about 8,000 employees. We've got 8 regional offices. I work at Region 3, which is located in Bloomington, Minnesota. And we cover about 8 different states in the Midwest. Nationwide, we've got about 562 wildlife refuges. We have one right here in Minneapolis.
Brian, you suddenly went mute. Oh. Brian? Not quite sure what happened here. There we go. Hey, Brian.
Nature is doing as nature is supposed to be doing. We do have fish hatcheries. We've got some down in Alaska, Wisconsin, a couple other places, but pretty much, all over America. We do work with other agencies too, or other countries. We work a lot with Canada and Mexico because obviously the animals migrate back and forth, so we want to make sure that everything's going well with them too. So when you get into the Fish and Wildlife Service, it's kind of
Hey,
hard to
Brian.
do like a day in the life for us because it's different everywhere. Everywhere across America, we may have different problems. We may have problems with invasive species of certain fish, or one of the
Brian?
things we have, our folks actually work at airports, international airports. Right now, the big thing is people smuggle turtles in and out of America, and that's a big no-no. They smuggle them in from other countries, and they try to take some of our turtles and smuggle them out and sell them. Ivory is a big thing coming from Africa. It's a big no-no. We catch people doing that, huge fines. So we try to keep an eye on everything, not only in America, but what's coming in and out of America. So I bring that up because, again, we have like 58 law enforcement offices as well. So next slide, please.
Brian, I'm going to interrupt you. Can you speak closer to your phone? We suddenly lost audio on your computer.
Yep. Let me get on my phone here. Is this better?
Yeah, you'll have to speak into your phone. Can you give us a recap of what you just said?
Okay. Sorry about that. Let me mute my computer here so that I'm not messing that up. Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Not sure what's going on. Like, I've been having computer problems, so I'm sorry about that. As I said, we've got about 8,000 employees within Fish and Wildlife Service all over America. I'm based here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Bloomington, and we have what's called a regional office here. It's called Region 3, which covers the Midwest. And we have what's our biggest thing in the Fish and Wildlife Service is probably our wildlife refuges. Okay, we've got about 562 of them nationwide. So a good way to find one of them, if you're interested, is go to fws.gov. Let me copy that and put it in the chat box here. But I think this is a cool website for us because if you go here, there's a map of the United States. And if you go and click on that map, you can click on Minnesota and you can see every office that we have within the state of Minnesota for Fish and Wildlife Service. It has the addresses, it has phone numbers, everything like that. So if you're interested to see what's around the area that you're at, please go to that website, click on that interactive map, and then just pick up the phone and call them and find out what's going on there. I've seen in the chat box, a lot of people have questions about, can I volunteer? Yes, definitely we have volunteers all over the place. Every refuge is different for what they're looking for. A lot of refuges have what's called friends and friends groups. And what they do is they understand, the federal government can't pay for everything. So maybe, let's say Litchfield, Minnesota, they might have a friends group over there. And they've got a certain problem or something that they kind of want to attack, and they collect money locally, and then they might hire people out of those funds. So that's not advertised on USA Jobs. That's just something local. And the only way you'll find out about that is by going on an interactive map, checking it out, picking up the phone, calling the refuge, and finding out if they've got anything for you. So I recommend that you do that if you're really interested in working with Fish and Wildlife Service. Can you go to the next slide, please? So there's different types of careers within Fish and Wildlife Service. Like I said, we've got about probably 8,000 people. Our biggest job is probably a general biologist. And I kind of had to laugh at that slide that Carrie had from the DNR, because that's pretty much how ours is too. A lot of people think you're out in the woods or you're out in nature doing all kinds of stuff. But believe it or not, the majority of our jobs, people are indoors writing reports, sitting at a desk, gathering information, and kind of putting a puzzle together to show whoever, the issues or the problems that we might have. Fish and Wildlife, we're also in charge of the Endangered Species Act. So if something comes on the Endangered Species Act, we get involved. And if it goes off, then obviously, hopefully the problem is solved. But a lot of people don't realize that, but we definitely get into stuff like that. We have park rangers. We have police officers on refuges, in the airports, things like that. We've got budget analysts. We've got accountants. We've got a lot of HR, human resources people. Public affairs specialists, that's a big one that I didn't even know about while I was in Fish and Wildlife. But they write a lot of articles to educate the public on what we are doing and the impact we're having. in some of our projects that we're doing. So very important. Next slide, please. So what are the requirements? Well, as I said, a lot of them, yes, we do want a 4-year degree or more, but a lot of them you can, come in with just a high school diploma. This is typical pay grade. If you don't have a degree, you're probably going to come in to the what we call the service, anywhere from a GS3 to a GS5 or 6. If you get a degree, you're coming in at probably a GS5 to a GS9. If you have a master's or above, then you're looking at coming in as a GS11 or higher. And the GS, that's general service, that's a pay band. So typically, as an example, a GS7 might be around, I'm not saying that off the top of my head, maybe 40,000 a year, something like that. I always tell people to don't let that initial pay scare you off. I was a military recruiter for quite a few years. I actually retired from the Air Force. And, a lot of kids would see that initial pay and they'd be like, that's not a lot of money, but, a lot of your perks and benefits are taken care of and they're not taken out of your paycheck like a lot of it is in the civilian world. So keep that in mind. We also have a progression ladder that you can climb up depending upon which job position you get into. Along with GS, we also have what's called WG, wage grade. Wage grade is more like blue collar workers. We have people that are welders, they're mechanics, they're fixing our equipment, things like that. So keep that in mind if you're, we are outdoors. So if you like to do outdoors type work, we build all kinds of things on our refuges, maintain vehicles, things like that. So we kind of got something for everybody. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. So where do we advertise most of our jobs? Again, that's usajobs.gov. I'm not sure if anybody's been on there. It's kind of a big job board. On USA Jobs, you can have up to 5 different resumes. There's a reason for that. You should build your resume for a specific job series that you're looking for. Give you an example. If you want to be a park ranger, that job series number is a 0025. Now, I can't build a resume for you, but I can tell you, how to go about getting one. I tell a lot of people, go to Google, type in Park Ranger 0025 resume. That shows you how to build a resume. You could also go on YouTube and check out different sources on YouTube on how people built their resumes for certain jobs that they got into in natural resources. So definitely check that out if you're serious about working in natural resources. Check out Google, check out YouTube. Next slide, please. We're like any big company, we advertise on social media, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. If you want to get on our mailing list, up to the left there's a little section called connect@fws.gov. Go there, put in your information, and we will keep you on our mailing list. We mail out every 2 weeks or so about different things that's going on in Fish and Wildlife Service. Right now I went into USA Jobs, and I think we had about 37 jobs nationwide in the service. Not a lot. We typically don't hire a lot because we don't have a lot of turnover. I mean, once we hire people, they pretty much stay on for 20 or 30 years until they retire. I tell you, this is one of the better jobs I've ever had in my life because it's out with nature. It's meaningful. You come to work today, you got a real mission to do, and it's an important mission. And I think you'll find that with the DNR and the other conservation conservation folks too, is it's meaningful work and it's satisfying work, and people like it. It's important. So that's good and it's bad. The bad part is we don't really have a lot of openings. So I tell people, kind of get your foot in the door any way you can, be it a volunteer, maybe do seasonal work for fire science, call up one of the refuges, find out if they've got something available for you to kind of get your foot in the door, and like anything else, kind of make connections. We don't have a whole lot of internships. We do offer one internship. It's in between, it's for college kids in between their junior and senior year, and that's only offered around December. We have about 50 of those, and they're nationwide, all over the place, doing different things. It could be working with a certain kind of snake, bird, wetland, invasive species in some lake or river, something like that. So when people ask about different internships, it's kind of tough to tell them, what they're like, because they're always different. Things are always changing in our environment. So we kind of try to keep up with anything that's needs immediate attention as far as their internships go. Next slide. Okay, that was the last one. Okay, so that's it. Yep, thanks for your time. I appreciate it, Liz. And
Yeah,
if there's any questions.
The tips about, looking for the Park Rangers series, the numbers and uploading the different resumes are really good. And I have noticed on usajobs.gov that they do have seminars on, tips on getting a federal job, both video, and then I thought they had some online webinars that you could attend too.
Yeah, very good, Liz. Yeah, they got a lot of those things. It's hard, I tell you. I've been in for 6 years, and I continually look to, just for upward mobility. And I had put in for it, and some jobs I think I'm totally qualified for. I'll put in for it, and I don't hear a thing. So I tell you that because don't get frustrated. You got to keep knocking on that door. Other jobs I've put in for, and I don't think I got a shot, and I've gotten calls and referrals. So it's kind of a hit and miss thing. I wish I could tell you what the exact secret is, but I myself don't know. I was fortunate enough, I used my what's called veteran status. So after there's veterans, if you go to any federal agency, you can use your veteran status to get hired. They don't always have to put all the jobs on USA Jobs. Sometimes they can just hire a veteran directly. Any federal agency can. Prior to coming to the Fish and Wildlife Service, I worked for the FBI, and that's how I got into the federal system. And then once I was in the FBI, I was looking around for other areas for better pay, and that's when I found Fish and Wildlife Service. I was actually I was living in Tampa, Florida. When I got a job offer, they said, we've got a job for you, but it's located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you want it, it's yours, but you're going to have to come up here. You're going to have to pay for the move yourself, but it's yours. So tough decision, but I'm glad I did it. I moved up here on my own dime, and I don't regret it. It's a great organization to work for. And I appreciate you having us, Liz. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for your time today. As the comments are coming up, a lot of people have found all of our speakers today very valuable. So thank you to Mary Jewell, Dave Copeland, Carrie Ross, and you, Brian Lee. I wanted to point out to everyone on the call that, we had government services on. But if you go to minnesotaworks.net, our national labor exchange, you type in any one of the keywords: soil, water, forestry, environmental. There are for-profit and other companies that are also hiring. So a couple of them are some of the water conservation districts. So Martin Soil and Water Conservation District, I think that's down by Fairmont. Winona County Soil and Water Conservation District are currently hiring. Minnesota Pollution Control, which is another department within the state system. Stantec and Environmental Resources Management and Terracon Consultants. Those three are for-profit companies. So there really are a lot of other companies that are hiring. So keep an eye on Minnesota Works. And Brian's tip for creating different resumes applies to these too. You really need to adjust your resume for every single type of company and job description that you intend to apply to. Dave mentioned that he also heard that Houston Engineering Incorporated has open positions. Thank you, Dave. Yeah. Hey, next week we're going to continue our look at this sector of natural resources and agriculture because they fit together in the sector umbrella. And we're going to focus on agriculture. We're going to have a couple of people from some family farms on, and I'm working to get a couple of additional speakers. So again, it's going to be an industry that you don't necessarily need a bachelor's of science in agriculture to work in there. We're going to talk more about that. And as you know, I have all of our past Explore Career webinars on YouTube. Some of the industry webinars that fit in today's previously that we've covered are government, there's environmental engineering, there's landscaping, and financial services. And you know, about the landscaping industry, I found out that if you have a background in math and if you like numbers, you might be a really good fit for irrigation and laying irrigation lines. So you get to be outside and you get to use your math skills and you get to plan um, uh, laying irrigation water lines. So that was fascinating to learn. But you can watch all of them on the Explore Careers playlist. Hey, after this, I want you all to, if you're in the Twin Cities and looking for a job, jump off of this webinar and go into the Metro Region Interactive.easyvirtualfair.com. I just put it in the chat. Right now, until 5 o'clock, they are having an online job fair where the recruiters sit on a portal and you can send them chats, you can telephone them, have a conversation with them. Some of the companies that are there right now are American Security, Bailiwick, Cabinets Work Group, United Health Group, Lampert Lumber, General Mills, Step by Step Montessori, Volkart May, United Postal Service. So a range of companies and industries. So jump over onto that. You will have to create a login if you haven't already, but it really is pretty quick. So I really encourage you to do that right now. Tomorrow, Anoka County has a virtual hiring event that they're focusing on the 55 age and up crowd. So if you fit that demographic, I encourage you to go and see what they have. And usually they have companies from that, you know, that are maybe headquartered in Anoka, but that have multiple locations across the metro. So especially if you live in the North Metro, I really encourage you to jump over and join that. So let me know how we can help you. My email address is liz.jennings@state.mn.us. Thanks for being here, and I hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.